Homo Habilis, the pioneering spirit of early humanity. Close your eyes. Let the heavy curtain of the present lift, dissolving into the shimmering heat of a world that is both alien and intimately familiar. Imagine the air, thick with the scent of ozone and dry golden grass, touching your skin with the warmth of an ancient sun, a light that bathed the earth nearly 2 million years ago. We are drifting back through the corridors of deep time, floating silently over the great Rift Valley of East Africa, where the cradle of our existence rocks gently in the wind. Can you hear it? The low, rhythmic thrum of the cicada, hidden in the acacia trees, the distant, mournful call of a prehistoric bird circling the thermal currents, and the soft crunch of volcanic soil beneath feet that are just beginning to learn the art of walking tall. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your city and local time in the comments so we can see where everyone is listening from. Now, let your breathing slow to the rhythm of the savannah. We are here to witness a dawn unlike any other, the moment when the biological clock of the earth struck a new hour. In this vast open theater of Tanzania, specifically the Olduvai Gorge, the story of Homo Habilis begins to unfold, a narrative written in bone and stone long before ink or paper were ever conceived. We are looking for a creature that stands at the very threshold of humanity, a being often called the handyman, though at first glance you might mistake them for their ancestors. Through the haze of the heat, we see a figure emerging from the brush. They are small, standing perhaps only 4 feet tall, a stature that might make you smile gently, thinking of them as children of time, yet they carry the weight of the future on their narrow shoulders. This is the dawn of our genus, the genus Homo, and this particular dawn broke in the consciousness of modern science in the early 1960s thanks to the tireless eyes of Louis and Mary Leakey. It is here, in the layered sediment of Olduvai, that they found a lower jaw, a collarbone, and fragments of a hand, fossil OH7, that would forever change our family tree. But look closely at our ancient protagonist as they pause by a stream, the water reflecting a face that is a fascinating map of where we came from and where we are going. Their face is less protruding than the apes of the past, the brow ridges prominent, but sheltering a mind that is waking up. This brings us to a whisper of scholarly intrigue that still drifts through the halls of academia. For decades, historians and paleoanthropologists have argued whether this creature truly belongs in our immediate family, the genus Homo, or if they should remain with the older, more ape-like Australopithecus. It is a debate of millimeters and definitions, but tonight we embrace them as the bridge. They are the sensu stricto and the sensu lato, terms that scientists use to grapple with the messy, beautiful variety of life. But to us, they are simply the ancestors who dared to be different. Our camera moves closer, invisible and silent, observing the way they move. It is a unique rolling gait. Their arms are long, dangling past their knees, a lingering memory of millions of years spent swinging through the canopies of high forests. If you were to shake hands with a Homo Habilis, a thought that is both terrifying and tender, you would feel a grip of immense power, fingers curved and strong, designed for hoisting a body up a tree in a heartbeat when the lion roars. Yet, look at their feet. The foot of Homo Habilis is a marvel of biological engineering, surprisingly modern, with an arch that acts as a shock absorber and a big toe that has lost its ape-like ability to grasp and instead aligns with the others to push off the ground. They are creatures of two worlds, confident climbers and determined walkers, living in a mosaic existence that we can scarcely imagine. Inside their skulls, a quiet revolution is taking place. While their ancestors looked out at the savannah with a brain size of roughly 400 cubic centimeters, Homo Habilis possesses a mind that has expanded to nearly 600 or even 800 cubic centimeters. It is as if a dim room has suddenly been flooded with candlelight. This 40% increase is not just bulk, it is structure. The frontal lobes are pushing outward, the parietal lobes are swelling, and deep within the gray matter, a small region known as Broca's area is becoming distinct. This is the seat of speech, the biological hardware for language. We cannot know if they spoke in sentences, if they told stories of the moon or gave names to the wind, but the potential is there, a dormant seed waiting for the rain. It is a profound thought to hold as you drift toward sleep, that the very first syllables of human connection may have been grunted or hummed by these small figures on the African plains. The world they inhabit is not a paradise. It is a prehistoric hell, teeming with danger, yet they navigate it with a new kind of cleverness. They are not the strongest, nor the fastest. A modern sprinter would leave them in the dust, and a chimpanzee would overpower them in a wrestling match, which is a funny image if you let it settle. Our great ancestor losing an arm wrestle to a cousin. But they have something else. They have the handy trait. The name Habilis means able, skillful, or handy, and it was bestowed upon them because they were the first to be definitively linked with stone tools. Imagine the scene. The sun is high and fierce, baking the clay of the gorge. A small group of them gathers near a dried riverbed. They are not making weapons of war. They are making cutlery. One of them picks up a volcanic rock, feeling its weight, its density. With a precision that requires a brain capable of planning and foresight, they strike it against another stone. Crack. A flake flies off, sharp as glass. This sound, this sharp crack echoing off the canyon walls, is more significant than the roar of any volcano. It is the sound of the Stone Age beginning. It is the sound of us taking control. We watch them work, their dark eyes focused, their hands steady. They are not just surviving, they are innovating. This ability to manipulate the environment, to turn a dull rock into a tool that can slice through hide and meat, is the superpower that will eventually allow their descendants to build pyramids, write symphonies, and fly to the stars. But for now, it is just a sharp edge in a dusty hand. The twilight begins to settle over the gorge, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The air cools, and the sounds of the night predators begin to rise, the chuff of a leopard, the whoop of a hyena. Our band of Homo Habilis huddles together. They are social creatures, finding safety in numbers, their small bodies pressing close for warmth and reassurance. They do not yet have fire to keep the dark at bay, only each other and their sharp stones. We leave them there, a cluster of heartbeats in the vast darkness of the Pleistocene, sleeping with one eye open, the pioneers of a journey that has led directly to you, lying safe in your bed, millions of years later. The wind whispers through the acacia thorns, a lullaby of endurance and beginning, as the first stars of the evening prick the velvet sky above Olduvai. The sun rises over the Rift Valley not as a gentle awakening, but as an immediate, demanding presence. The cool blue of the pre-dawn evaporates in seconds, replaced by a stark white light that reveals the texture of the world in high definition. As our band of Homo Habilis stirs from their sleeping places, perhaps a nest of flattened grass tucked into the crook of a low tree or a shallow depression in the earth shielded by thorny brush, the day's primary labor begins. It is not the hunt, not yet. It is the search for the catalyst of their survival. We follow a small group as they move toward the riverbed, their feet leaving faint impressions in the damp sand that will one day bake into stone. They are looking for something specific, and this purposeful searching is what separates them from the rest of the animal kingdom. A chimpanzee might pick up a fallen branch to fish for termites, using what is at hand, but these ancestors are carrying a mental map. They know that 3 miles to the east, past the grove of fever trees, there's an outcrop of basalt, a dark, heavy volcanic rock that sings a specific note when struck. This is the dawn of logistics. Watch the hands of the lead male. We shall call him the Shaper, though he has no name that we would recognize, only a scent and a sound that identifies him to his kin. His hands are dark, leathery, and scarred, the hands of a worker. He sifts through the river stones, discarding the sandstone that is too soft, the pumice that is too light. He's looking for quartz, quartzite, or basalt, stones that hold a secret structure. When he finds a cobblestone the size of a grapefruit, he weighs it, tossing it gently from palm to palm. It is heavy, dense, and cold. This is the core. In his other hand, he holds a hammerstone, a harder, rounder rock that has seen many days like this. This is the moment the universe holds its breath. For millions of years, stones were just obstacles or sleeping platforms. Now, they are about to become technology. The shaper sits cross-legged on the dusty bank, positioning the core on his thigh, or perhaps on a larger anvil stone. He tilts his head, calculating the angle of impact. This is not random bashing. This is physics understood through muscle memory. He strikes. Clack. The sound is sharp, rhythmic, almost musical. It is the heartbeat of the Paleolithic. A flake of stone creates a perfect conchoidal fracture, a shell-like curve, and detaches from the core, spinning into the dirt. He picks it up. The edge is razor-thin, sharper than any surgical steel we can manufacture today because it fractures down to the molecular level. He has created a knife where there was none. This tool technology is what archaeologists will later term the Oldowan Industrial Complex, named after the very gorge where we are watching him work. It is the longest-lasting industry in human history, a design that will remain virtually unchanged for nearly 1 million years. You have to admire that level of brand loyalty. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. And if it is broke, well, you just make another flake. But let us pause and look at the mind behind the motion. Historians and cognitive scientists still argue whether this napping required a leap in language or just advanced imitation. To strike the stone correctly, one must understand the geometry of solids, where to hit to flake off a piece without shattering the whole core. It requires prescience, the ability to see the finished tool inside the raw rock before it exists. This is a cognitive superpower. It suggests that Homo Habilis had developed a level of abstract thinking that the Australopithecines likely lacked. The shaper is not just reacting to hunger, he is preparing for a hunger that has not yet arrived. He is manufacturing a future. He strikes again. Clack. Another flake falls. He's making a chopper, a simple tool with a jagged edge, perfect for smashing, sawing, or scraping. Around him, younger members of the troop watch. This is the classroom of the Pleistocene. There are no textbooks, no lectures, only the intense, unblinking observation of the youth. A juvenile, barely 3 feet tall with wide, curious eyes, picks up a discarded flake and mimics the motion, banging 2 rocks together clumsily. Dust flies, but the rock does not break. The shaper does not scold. He perhaps pauses, adjusts the angle of the juvenile's hand, a silent correction that bridges the gap between generations. This transmission of knowledge is the birth of culture, information passed not through genes but through teaching. It is a fragile flame, this culture. If the group dies, the knowledge of how to nap stone could die with them, leaving the next generation to rediscover it by accident. But here, by the river, the chain remains unbroken. The sensory details of this workshop are vivid. The air smells of crushed flint, a sulphurous burning scent that lingers in the nostrils. There is the dry, chalky taste of rock dust in the air. The heat is rising, shimmering off the rocks, yet they work on. We must also consider the stones themselves. These rocks are manuports, materials carried by hand over long distances. Fossil evidence shows that Homo habilis would transport high-quality stone for miles, far from its geological source. Imagine the foresight required to carry a heavy rock for 2 hours, just in case you might need a knife later. It is the prehistoric equivalent of remembering to bring your keys. It implies a memory of the landscape and a plan for the day. While the shaper works, we see the diversity of the toolkit expanding. It is not just choppers. There are scrapers for cleaning hide, awls for piercing, and polyhedrons, multifaceted stones whose purpose is still debated by scholars, perhaps used for pounding distinct vegetation. It is a humble toolkit. If you saw these stones on a hiking trail today, you would likely kick them aside thinking they were just broken rocks. But to the trained eye, the bulb of percussion, the specific ripple mark left by the strike, is the signature of intent. It is the autograph of humanity. These are the first permanent artifacts we left behind, the first evidence that we were here and that we were trying to change our world. As the pile of sharp flakes grows, a sense of satisfaction settles over the group. The shaper runs his thumb carefully along the edge of a fresh flake, not to cut himself, but to test the bite. It is ready. These tools are the keys that will unlock a treasure trove of calories previously forbidden to them. Without claws like the leopard or jaws like the crocodile, Homo habilis was evolutionarily under-equipped for the carnivorous life. But with this sharp stone, they have borrowed the leopard's claw. They have forged an equalizer. The stone is a prosthetic adaptation, an external organ that does what their biology cannot. The sun is now high, a white hole in the violet sky. The cicadas are screaming their midday song. The group gathers their new tools, some carrying the sharp flakes in folds of skin, or perhaps in simple carriers made of twisted vegetation, though such soft materials have long since rotted away, leaving us only to guess. They stand up, the shaper gripping his prize hammerstone, a favorite he will not discard. They turn away from the riverbed, moving back toward the golden savanna. They are armed now, not for war, but for the harvest of the dead. The rhythm of the napping fades, clack, 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 replaced by the soft shuffling sound of bipedal walking. They move with a new confidence. The stone in their hand gives them an edge, literally and metaphorically. They are ready to face the prehistoric hell that awaits them in the long grass, ready to carve their place in the food chain. We float after them, the invisible observers, watching as the glint of silica in their hands catches the sun, a tiny spark that will eventually ignite the world. A mosaic of two worlds. As the band moves away from the riverbed, the stones clicking softly in their grasp, we shift our focus from what they hold to who they are. To watch a Homo habilis move across the landscape is to witness a living paradox, a creature caught in the exquisite tension between two distinct realities. They are the mosaic, a biological puzzle where the ancient past and the distant future have been stitched together in a single breathing organism. We glide alongside a female now, let us call her the climber. She is small, perhaps only 3.5 feet tall, a stature that would make her seem fragile to modern eyes, like a child lost in the wilderness. But do not be deceived by her size. Underneath her dark, sun-warmed skin lies a tensile strength that we have largely lost. Watch her walk. It is a bipedal gait. Yes, she stands on 2 legs, freeing her hands to carry the sharp flakes they have just made. But it is not quite the confident, striding lope of the marathon runner you might see in a park today. Her legs are relatively short, her stride length limited, giving her a distinct, slightly shuffling rhythm. There is a rolling quality to her movement, a sway that speaks of hips that are widening, reshaping the birth canal to accommodate a brain that is slowly, inexorably growing larger. It is a compromise, as all evolution is. To walk upright is to fight gravity in a new way, balancing a heavy torso on a vertical column, and her body is the laboratory where this experiment is being refined. But look higher. Look at her arms. They are disproportionately long, dangling down toward her knees, a ghostly echo of a time when her ancestors did not walk the earth, but swung above it. This brings us to a fascinating point of contention that still animates university lecture halls. The discovery of specimen. H62 in 1986. This fossil revealed that Homo habilis had arm-to-leg proportions more similar to the earlier Australopithecines than to the later Homo erectus. It was a shock to the scientific community, a reminder that evolution is not a straight line of progress, but a branching, twisting bush. The climber stops at the base of a wild fig tree. The scent of overripe fruit, sweet and fermenting, hangs heavy in the air, a siren call in the dry heat. Here, the mosaic nature of her body suddenly makes perfect sense. On the open ground, she is a slow, somewhat vulnerable walker, but the moment her hands touch the rough, gray bark, she transforms. Her long arms reach up, and those curved finger bones, phalanges that are slightly bent unlike our straight ones, lock onto a branch with the force of a vice. She hoists herself up with an ease that defies gravity, her upper body muscles rippling with a power that no modern gym-goer could replicate. In the trees, she is graceful, fluid, a master of the vertical world. It is a reminder that while she is the handyman of the ground, she is still the daughter of the canopy. She navigates the branches, plucking figs with a precision grip, thumb and forefinger meeting perfectly, that is distinctly human. This duality is her survival strategy. The ground offers meat, marrow, and stone, but the trees offer safety and sugar. She lives in the seam between the savanna and the forest, a niche that allows her to exploit the best of both worlds while never fully belonging to either. It must be a confusing existence, spatially. Imagine the sensory shift. One moment you are vulnerable, scanning the horizon for the gold and black blur of a predator at eye level, and the next, you are 30 feet up, the wind cooling your sweat, looking down at the world like a god. This vertical capability is crucial because, let's be honest, the Homo Habilis sprint speed is not winning any Olympic medals. If a lion charges, you don't run a 100-meter dash, you run to the nearest tree and pray your grip holds. It adds a layer of soft humor to the scene, the dignified ancestor of humanity, scampering up a trunk like a frightened squirrel when the grass rustles too loudly. Yet, looking at her feet as she perches on a thick limb, we see the future again. The fossil foot OH8 tells us that her big toe is in line with the others, not sticking out like a thumb as it does in chimpanzees. She has lost the ability to grasp branches with her feet. This means she cannot swing as effortlessly as a monkey. She must climb with a bit more caution, relying on her hands. Her foot has a rigid arch, a spring-loaded mechanism designed to push off the earth, to absorb the shock of thousands of steps. It is a foot made for walking, for traveling, for the nomadic life that will eventually take her descendants out of Africa. She sits there for a moment, enjoying the fig, juice staining her chin, her legs dangling. We can see the texture of her hair, thick and likely dark, protecting her skull from the relentless equatorial sun. We can see the deep calmness in her brown eyes, eyes that have white sclera beginning to show, perhaps, a trait that aids in nonverbal communication, letting others see where she is looking. This cooperative eye hypothesis suggests that our eyes evolved to help us work together, to silently signal, look at that, or watch out. D. Below her, the shaper and the others are waiting. They are terrestrial by necessity, arboreal by refuge. The climber finishes her fruit and descends, the trip down a little less graceful than the trip up, a controlled slide of friction and muscle. She lands in the dust with a soft thud, her arched feet absorbing the impact. She rejoins the group, and they continue their trek. The sun is beginning its descent, casting long, spindly shadows that stretch out from their feet like dark roads leading to tomorrow. They are walking into a changing world, a drying world where the forests are shrinking and the grasslands are expanding. Their bodies are the answer to this climatic riddle. Keep the climbing arms for the retreating trees, but build a walking foot for the encroaching plains. It is a brilliant, messy, beautiful adaptation. As they move, the tall grass brushes against their waists, a tactile reminder of their new reality. They are exposed here. The safety of the leaves is behind them. The danger of the horizon is ahead. The climber looks back once at the tree, a brief glance of longing perhaps, or maybe just a check to remember where the food is. Then she turns her face forward, her human-like feet leaving a trail in the dust, stepping out of the shadow of the ape and into the light of the human. The wind picks up, rustling the dry stalks, sounding like the whispers of millions of years of ancestors urging them on. Walk, climb, survive, become. Shadows in the tall grass. To leave the sanctuary of the trees is to enter a world of deception. As our band of Homo Habilis steps fully into the open savanna, the golden grass rises to meet them, waist-high and whispering in the dry wind. It is a landscape of breathtaking beauty, a swaying ocean of amber and ochre under the immense African sky. But beauty here is a mask for brutality. To us, looking back through the lens of millions of years, this is a romantic vista. To them, it is a labyrinth of sightlines and blind spots. They are small, remember, standing barely 4 feet tall on average, which means the grass is a wall, a veil that hides the intentions of the world. They move in a tight formation, a cluster of anxiety and awareness. This is not the casual stroll of a modern hiker. This is a tactical advance. Every head is on a swivel. Every ear is tuned to a frequency of danger that we have long since tuned out. The silence here is heavy, not empty. It is a silence that waits. You can almost feel the static in the air, the prickle on the back of your neck that signals being watched. And they are being watched. The fossil record is a grim diary of this reality. We know from the bones left behind, the bite marks on skulls, the punctures in femurs, that Homo Habilis was not the king of this jungle. They were a menu item. In the shadows of the tall grass, the Dinophelis lurks. This is a creature of nightmare, a false saber-toothed cat roughly the size of a modern jaguar, but heavier, built for ambush. It does not chase, it waits. Its teeth are designed not just to kill, but to crush the skulls of primates. It is a specialist, an evolutionary answer to the question, how do I eat the thing that climbs trees? There is a dark, almost poetic symmetry to it. As our ancestors learned to escape, the predators learned to follow. But the cats are not the only shadows. In the wetlands near the lake margin, the water ripples with the movement of the Crocodilus anthropophagus, the man-eating crocodile. These are not the lethargic logs of a zoo exhibit. They are horned, armored tanks that can launch themselves from the mud with terrifying speed. The famous fossil foot, OH8, the very one that showed us they walked upright, bears the distinct crushing signature of a crocodile bite, a permanent reminder that the water's edge was a place of blood and bone. Watch now as the group freezes. The shaper, the male with the stone tools, holds up a hand. The grass ahead, perhaps 30 yards away, has moved against the wind. A low, guttural growl vibrates through the ground, a sound felt in the stomach more than heard in the ears. It is a leopard. The tension pulls taut like a bowstring. Here is where the true strength of Homo habilis is revealed. It is not in their claws, for they have none. It is not in their jaws, which are shrinking to make room for brainpower. It is in their unity. A single handyman is a snack, a group is a problem. They do not run blindly. That would trigger the chase instinct of the cat. Instead, they coalesce. They become a single organism with many eyes and many arms. They begin to make noise, a chaotic, rhythmic wall of sound. They hoot, they scream, they slap their thighs in the ground. The juveniles scramble to the center of the circle, shielded by the bodies of the adults. The climber, the female we watched earlier, picks up a stone, not a tool this time, but a weapon, and hurls it with that precise baseball pitcher arm that evolution has gifted her. It falls short, kicking up dust, but the message is clear. We are not easy. This behavior, this collective defense, is a defining moment in our history. It is the birth of the selfish herd, a biological theory suggesting that individuals reduce their own risk by placing others between themselves and the predator. Yet here, it looks more like altruism. They stand their ground. The leopard, confused by the noise and the flying debris, hesitates. Predators are economists. They calculate risk versus reward. Is this small, screaming meal worth a potential eye injury from a flying rock? Today, the answer is no. The gold and black shadow slips away, dissolving back into the grass like smoke. The group does not cheer, they exhale. A collective shudder runs through them, the adrenaline leaving their systems in a wave of shivering. They are safe for the next 10 minutes. This constant state of vulnerability shapes their minds as much as their bodies. It forces them to be hyper-aware, to read the landscape like a book. Every bent stalk of grass, every sudden silence of the birds, every shift in the wind is data to be processed. This pressure cooker of predation is likely one of the driving forces behind their expanding brains. You have to be smart to survive when you are slow and delicious. It also binds them together emotionally. The shared trauma of near-death experiences creates bonds that are stronger than mere proximity. When they groom each other later, picking ticks from fur and smoothing hair, it will be an act of reassurance, a chemical release of oxytocin that says, I am here, you are here, we are alive. But there is another layer to this prehistoric hell. It is not just the beasts on the ground. The sky itself is a threat. High above, a crown hawk eagle circles, a speck against the blinding blue. These raptors are massive, powerful enough to lift a small monkey, or a Homo Habilis toddler, clean off the ground. The shadow of a bird passing over the group causes every mother to instinctively reach for her young. It is a fear that is deeply engaging, a primal anxiety that perhaps still lingers in our nightmares of falling or being snatched away. It adds a vertical dimension to their terror. Death can come from the grass, from the water, or from the clouds. As the sun begins to dip lower, painting the sky in violent shades of violet and bruised red, the group moves with more urgency. They need a safe haven for the night. They are heading toward a rocky outcrop, a place where the cliffs offer protection at their backs. The open plain is no place to sleep. The transition from day to night is a psychological shift as well. The world of the visual, where they are beginning to dominate with their tools and observational skills, gives way to the world of the olfactory and auditory, where the predators reign supreme. The leopard owns the night. They reach the rocks as the first star appears. It is a moment of profound relief. They scramble up the rough surfaces, their climbing heritage serving them well again. Perched on a ledge, safe from the prowling cats below, they can finally rest. But even in rest, they are vigilant. They huddle together, a pile of limbs in warmth. This physical contact is essential. It regulates their body temperature in the cooling air, but it also regulates their fear. Imagine the feeling of leaning against the warm back of another, hearing their steady heartbeat, knowing that you are not alone in the vast, dark universe. It is the original comfort, the first security blanket. As they settle, the sounds of the African night erupt. The whoops of hyenas, the churring of nightjars, the distant trumpet of an elephant. These are the sounds of a world that does not care if they survive. And yet, they do. They survive because they have turned their weakness into a strength. They have traded claws for cooperation, fangs for flint, and isolation for community. They are the underdogs of the Pliocene, fighting against the odds with nothing but a sharp rock and a friend. It is a humble, terrifying existence, but in the face of these shadows, the spark of humanity is being fanned into a flame. The handyman is not just a tool maker. He is a survivor, a creature that refuses to go gently into the dark stomach of the earth. We watch them drift into a light sleep, their eyelids fluttering, dreaming perhaps of a world where the grass is just grass and the shadows do not have teeth. The bone breakers. Hunger is the oldest engine of invention, a dull, twisting ache in the belly that demands a solution. As the sun climbs to its zenith, bleaching the color from the savanna and turning the horizon into a shimmering mirage of heat, our band of Homo Habilis feels this ache acutely. The figs and berries of the morning were merely an appetizer. Their bodies, and more importantly, their expanding brains, require something denser, something richer. We follow them now as they navigate a landscape of death, guided not by the sight of prey, but by the signifiers of a kill. Look up. High in the thermal currents, a spiral of vultures turns slowly, black specks against the blinding white blue. To a modern observer, this is a sign of decay. To the handyman, it is a dinner bell. It is the specific visual language of the scavenger, a signal that energy has been released somewhere on the plains. They move toward it, not with the stealth of a hunter stalking a living breath, but with the hurried, anxious pace of thieves approaching a bank vault that has already been blown open. We arrive at the scene before them. It is a chaotic, smelly, buzzing tableau. A large antelope, perhaps a wildebeest ancestor, lies in the dust, its ribcage a hollow cathedral of red and white. The lions have eaten their fill and departed to sleep off the heat in the shade of the acacia, leaving the carcass to the secondary tier of the food chain. Jackals snap at the remaining sinew, Vultures hop and hiss with reptilian aggression. This is the moment of the confrontational scavenger. The popular image of early man is often the mighty hunter, spear in hand, bringing down the mammoth. But historians and archaeologists have spent decades dismantling this myth, sifting through the evidence of cut marks on bones. The truth is grittier, smellier, and perhaps more desperate. The cut marks left by stone tools often overlay the tooth marks of carnivores, proving that humans arrived second. We were not yet the kings of the jungle. We were the clever rats, stealing crumbs from the lion's table. But what crumbs they are! The group bursts onto the scene. They are loud, screaming and throwing stones, a tactic of kleptoparasitism designed to intimidate the jackals. It works. The smaller scavengers scatter, yipping in protest. The Homo Habilis do not waste time. They know the lions could return, or worse, a hyena pack could arrive. They surround the carcass, but they are not interested in the scraps of meat left on the ribs. They are after the fortress that no other animal can breach. The shaper, our familiar toolmaker, steps forward. In his hand is a heavy cobble, a hammerstone selected specifically for this task. He targets the long bones, the femur, the humerus. These are not just structural supports for the antelope. They are sealed vaults containing the most calorie-dense substance in the natural world, bone marrow. Watch the physics of the strike. He places the antelope femur on a stone anvil. He raises the hammerstone. Crack. The sound is distinct, a dry, sharp report that echoes differently than the napping of flint. It is the sound of a biological safe being cracked, the bone splinters revealing the interior canal. Inside lies the marrow, a pinkish-white fatty paste. To us, it might look unappealing, but to them, it is pure survival. It is grease. It is energy. It is life. A single tablespoon of this substance contains more calories than a bucket of roots. The shaper scoops it out, perhaps using a small flake of stone or a finger, and consumes it immediately. The look on his face is one of intense sensory satisfaction. The fat coats the tongue, triggering a dopamine rush that screams success. This moment, repeated over thousands of generations, is the fuel for the expensive tissue hypothesis. The brain is a greedy organ. In modern humans, it consumes about 20% of our metabolic energy, despite being only 2% of our body weight. For Homo habilis, whose brain was rapidly expanding, this energy budget had to come from somewhere. The hypothesis suggests a trade-off. As the gut shrank, because meat and marrow are easier to digest than raw, fibrous plants, energy was freed up to power the growing brain. They are literally eating their way to intelligence. The marrow is building the mind that will one day understand the stars. It is a profound feedback loop. Better brains make better tools access more marrow builds better brains. The sensory environment here is overwhelming. The smell is a thick metallic tang of iron-rich blood, mixed with the musk of the lion that was here before, and the sour scent of the rumen content spilling from the antelope's stomach. Flies are everywhere, a buzzing cloud that crawls into eyes and nostrils. Yet, the group is undeterred. They work with a frenzied efficiency. Other members of the band take other bones, smashing them to access the prize. It is a communal act, but not without tension. A younger male tries to snatch a broken tibia from a female. She snaps at him, baring teeth, a reminder that while they are social, hunger is a primal individualist. But mostly, they share. The mothers feed the marrow to the weaned offspring, passing on this concentrated nutrition to the next generation. This provisioning is crucial. It shortens the time between births, allowing the population to grow. There is a scholarly debate here worth whispering about. Did they scavenge passively, waiting for the carcass to be abandoned, or actively chasing off the predators while the kill was fresh? The evidence of power scavenging suggests they might have been bold enough to drive off leopards or cheetahs using their numbers and their stones. It paints a picture of a creature that is far more audacious than a mere bottom feeder. They were calculating risks, measuring the hunger of the predator against the hunger in their own bellies. Today, they chose correctly. The lions are asleep, the hyenas are distant. As they finish, the bones lie shattered. the marrow thieves having extracted every ounce of value. They do not linger. The scent of the open carcass is a beacon that will soon attract trouble they cannot handle. They grab a few portable pieces, a leg joint, a slab of rib, and retreat back toward the safety of the trees or the rocky outcrops. Their faces are smeared with grease, their hands sticky with the residue of the feast. They look savage, perhaps, to our sanitized eyes. But look closer. Look at the coordination, the tool use, the understanding of anatomy required to know where to hit the bone to break it without crushing the marrow. This is not savagery, it is science in its infancy. It is the application of technology to biology. They move away, satiated for the first time in days. The sun begins to lose its harshest edge, the light softening into the golden hour. The energy from the fat is already beginning to digest, flooding their bloodstreams with glucose and fatty acids. It will power the neurons firing in the shaper's mind as he thinks about tomorrow's path. It will fuel the muscles of the climber as she carries her child. They are building the human future, one broken bone at a time. We watch them go, leaving the shattered remains for the ants and the beetles, the final cleaners of the savannah. The wind blows through the hollow rib cage of the antelope, playing it like a macabre instrument, a song of the cycle of life and death that governs the rift. The handyman has eaten, and in doing so, has bought another day of evolution, whispers of a new mind. The sun has finally surrendered the sky, bleeding out into a deep indigo twilight that heralds the arrival of the true owners of the landscape, the nocturnal predators. But up on the rocky ledge, tucked into the embrace of a cliff face that retains the day's heat like a stone radiator, our band of Homo Habilis is settling into the most profound activity of their existence. It is not eating, nor sleeping, nor fighting. It is connecting. As the light fades, the visual world dissolves, and the world of sound and touch takes over. We move our camera intimately close to the shaper and the climber, who sit with knees touching a tangle of limbs and dark fur. She is grooming him, her fingers working through the hair on his back with a rhythmic, hypnotic precision. This is not merely hygiene. It is politics. It is affection. It is the social glue that holds the troop together. In the absence of a spoken language to say, "I forgive you," or "I support you," the act of picking a tick from a neighbor's shoulder is a sonnet of loyalty. It releases endorphins, a chemical wash of calm that counters the cortisol of a day spent dodging leopards. But tonight, something else is stirring in the cool air, something invisible and momentous. Inside the shaper's skull, the neural architecture is buzzing with a new kind of electricity. We know from the endocasts of fossil skulls, molds of the brain's impression on the bone, that the Homo habilis brain was not just bigger than its ancestors, it was organized differently. The frontal lobes, the seat of planning and inhibition, are widening. More importantly, the area we now call Broca's area, responsible for speech production in modern humans, is bulging slightly, a distinct bump on the landscape of the left hemisphere. It is like seeing the foundation of a house being poured. The walls aren't up yet, but the intent to build is undeniable. The shaper turns to face the group. He holds a stone flake in his hand, one that broke incorrectly earlier in the day. He wants to convey a concept that is abstract: failure. Not just, "This rock is bad," but "the way I hit it was wrong." He grunts a low nasal sound, "Huh-gah," and slaps the stone against his palm in a sharp glancing motion, then shakes his head. This brings us to a fascinating scholarly debate that echoes through the corridors of anthropology, the gesture-first hypothesis. Many linguists and evolutionary biologists argue that human language didn't start with the voice, but with the hands. The very same neural pathways that control the precise manipulation of tools are adjacent to and overlapped by the pathways for language. It is as if the brain, having learned to sequence the strikes of a hammerstone, hit, turn, realized it could also sequence symbols to create meaning. The shaper is not just showing a bad rock, he is performing a sentence with his body. The others watch, their eyes locking onto his hands. This joint attention, the ability to share a focus on a third object, is a cognitive leap that separates them from the chimps. A chimp points to get food, a human points to share an idea. The shaper grunts again, a specific jagged sound that he only uses for broken. It is a clumsy performance. One of the juveniles, a boisterous male with a tuft of unruly hair, mimics the sound but gets the pitch wrong, letting out a high-pitched squeak that sounds more like a stepped-on hyrax than a wise elder. The group ripples with a soft, huffing sound. Laughter. It is not the cruel mockery of a schoolyard, but a gentle, bonding amusement. They are laughing at the incongruity, a distinct sign of advanced intelligence. Humor requires an expectation, a serious grunt, and a subversion, a silly squeak. To find this funny, they must have a mental model of how the world should sound. It is a tiny, warm joke in the cold prehistoric night, a flicker of humanity that feels incredibly close to us. But let us listen closer to the sounds they do make. Their vocal tracts are not like ours. The larynx in Homo Habilis is likely still positioned high in the throat, similar to an infant's, which allows them to breathe and swallow simultaneously, a great trick for not choking, but a limitation for speech. They cannot produce the vowels I, U, or A clearly. Their speech, if we can call it that, is likely a mix of nasal tones, clicks, and holistic utterances, sounds that mean an entire situation rather than individual words. A sharp crack might mean the stone broke, watch out, and I am frustrated all at once depending on the context. It is a musical proto-language, as proposed by some theorists like Stephen Mithen, where rhythm and tone carry the burden of meaning that grammar will one day shoulder. The climber shifts, the baby at her breast stirring. She hums a low, vibrating note, a sound that resonates in her chest. It is a lullaby, the first and most enduring genre of music. It serves a biological function to signal to the infant that the mother is present, allowing the child to divert energy from crying to growing. But it also signals to the group that all is well. In the dark, sound is their tether. They are beginning to use their voices to navigate the emotional landscape, just as they use their stones to navigate the physical one. We are witnessing the birth of the gossip circle, the idea that language evolved to replace grooming. As groups got larger, you couldn't physically pick the lice off everyone. There isn't enough time in the day. So you groom them with your voice. You chatter, you hum, you make sounds that wrap around the group like a warm blanket. The night deepens, and the temperature drops. They huddle tighter, a pile of warmth against the stone. The shaper drops the broken flake. He looks out at the moon, a bright cratered eye staring back. Does he wonder what it is? Does he have a name for it? Perhaps not a noun, but a feeling associated with the light that eats the dark. The expansion of the parietal lobes suggests an increased ability to process sensory information, and perhaps the beginnings of metaphor. The moon is not just a light, it is a companion. This is the dawn of the mythic mind, the capacity to imbue the world with meaning beyond the literal. In the silence, broken only by the breathing of the troop and the distant scream of a bush baby, a profound shift is occurring. The isolation of the individual mind is being breached. For millions of years, thoughts were locked inside the skull, dying with the organism. Now, through a grunt, a gesture, a hum, a thought can jump from one brain to another. It is the beginning of the collective consciousness, the library of human knowledge that will eventually hold everything from the recipe for fire to the codes for the internet. It starts here, in the dark, with a handyman trying to explain that he made a mistake. As they drift toward sleep, the juvenile who squeaked earlier tries the sound again, softer this time, practicing. Huh-gah. The shaper does not open his eyes, but he reaches out a hand and pats the youth's knee. A confirmation. Good. The lesson is learned. The bridge is built. And in that simple tactile feedback loop, the potential for Shakespeare, for Einstein, for every song ever written, is preserved in the fragile firing neurons of a creature dreaming on a ledge in Africa. The silence of the universe has been broken, not by a roar, but by a whisper. Neighbors in the rift. The dawn chorus has faded, replaced by the heavy droning hum of midday insects, a sound that vibrates in the heat like a plucked string. We are drifting now, moving away from the intimate safety of the cliff ledge and out into the wider theater of the Rift Valley. To understand Homo habilis, we must understand that they are not the lonely actors on an empty stage. They are merely one character in a crowded, noisy, and competitive ensemble cast. The landscape is a mosaic of woodlands and wetlands, and it is teeming with life that would make a modern safari look like a petting zoo. As our band of handymen moves through a patch of fever trees, navigating the dappled sunlight with their characteristic shuffling gait, the ground beneath us begins to tremble. It is a rhythmic, deep thudding that travels up through the soles of the feet, the signature of giants. We pull back the branches to reveal a creature that belongs to the realm of myth, the Dinotherium. This is an ancestor of the elephant, but it is a beast drawn from a darker imagination. It stands nearly 13 feet tall at the shoulder, a gray mountain of muscle and wrinkle. Unlike modern elephants, its tusks do not curve upward in a triumphant arc. They curve downward from the lower jaw, like massive recurved hooks. Watch as it uses these hoe-like tusks to strip the bark from a tree, the sound of tearing wood echoing like a gunshot. Our Homo habilis group freezes. They are respectful of this power. They know that to be stepped on is to be erased. They wait, silent and small, while the giant passes, its trunk sniffing the air, indifferent to the tiny bipeds hiding in the brush. This indifference is a key feature of their world. The Dinotherium does not hunt them, but it occupies the space they need. It is a reminder of their physical insignificance. They are not the lords of the earth. They are the tenants, scurrying between the legs of landlords who could crush them without noticing. But the giants are not the most intriguing neighbors. As the Dinotherium lumbers away, fading into the heat haze, we turn our gaze to the marshy edge of a nearby lake. Here, amidst the papyrus reeds and the squelching mud, is a face that looks disturbingly familiar, yet bizarrely alien. Meet Paranthropus boisei, often affectionately and accurately nicknamed Nutcracker Man. If Homo habilis is the handyman, the jack of all trades, boisei is the heavy machinery. We drift closer to a male boisei. He is a striking figure, slightly shorter and broader than our habilis, with a skull that seems built for war. His face is wide and dish-shaped, with massive flaring cheekbones that anchor chewing muscles so powerful they require a bony ridge on the top of his skull, a sagittal crest, just to attach them. He looks like he is wearing a permanent helmet of bone. The interaction between these two species, Homo and Paranthropus, is one of the most fascinating chapters in human evolution. They lived side by side in East Africa for nearly 1 million years. Imagine that. Two distinct species of upright walking hominins, cousins on the evolutionary tree, sharing the same zip code for 1,000 millennia. Historians and paleoanthropologists debate the nature of this coexistence. Was it a violent rivalry? A peaceful indifference? The leading theory today is niche partitioning, a fancy biological term for ordering off different menus. Watch the boisei now. He pulls up a clump of sedge, a tough, fibrous wetland grass. He bites into the root with molars that are 4 times the size of a modern human's, teeth the size of quarters. Crunch. The sound is audible from 20 paces. He is a specialist, a machine designed to process the tough, low-quality vegetation that other animals cannot eat. Our Homo habilis group watches him. They are close enough to see the whites of his eyes. There is no aggression, only a wary acknowledgement. The shaper, our tool user, holds a stone flake, while the Nutcracker Man holds a root. Here lies the divergence of destiny. Boisei solved the problem of survival with his body, evolving massive jaws to eat what was available. Habilis solved it with their brain, using tools to access meat and marrow. It is a classic evolutionary wager, biology versus technology. For now, in this lush, wet epoch, boisei is actually the more successful species. There are more of them. They are robust, healthy, and perfectly adapted. If you were a betting alien observing Earth 2 million years ago, you might put your money on the guy with the giant jaws, not the scrawny one with the sharp rock. It creates a soft, ironic tension. We know who wins in the long run, but they do not. To the Habilis, the Boisei are the successful, strong neighbors who never seem to go hungry. There's a moment of interaction that feels almost suburban. A juvenile Habilis, perhaps emboldened by curiosity, steps a little too close to the Boisei feeding ground. The massive male Paranthropus stops chewing. He turns that wide, flat face toward the intruder and lets out a low, rumbling grunt, not a predator's growl, but a clear, "Get off my lawn" warning. The Habilis juvenile scampers back to his mother, and the tension dissolves. They are neighbors in an uneasy truce, separated by diet but united by the threat of the leopards that stalk them both. But the neighborhood is getting even more crowded. Shadows are moving in the periphery, hints of other forms. Some fossils, like KNM-ER1470, suggest there might be a third player on the field, Homo rudolfensis. This species is larger, with a flatter face and a bigger brain than Habilis, yet distinct. Are they a different species, or just a large male Habilis? The lumpers and splitters of the scientific community have argued over this for decades. For our story, let us view them as the diversity of the genus Homo exploding, trying out different shapes and sizes to see what fits. It is a time of evolutionary experimentation. The Rift Valley is a laboratory, and the Bunsen burners are on high. The sun beats down, shimmering off the lake where a flock of flamingos takes flight, painting the air in a sudden stroke of pink. The noise is cacophonous, the honking of birds, the crunching of boisei, the breaking of branches by the Dinotherium. In the middle of this, our Homo Habilis group seems fragile. They lack the sheer bulk of the elephants and the specialized armor of the Boisei. They are the underdogs of the ecosystem. Yet, as they move away from the marsh, seeking the shade of a distant acacia grove, we see their advantage. They are adaptable. When the rains fail and the tough sedges of the Boisei dry up, the nutcracker man will struggle. But the handyman will switch to insects, to lizards, to scavenged meat, to underground tubers dug up with sticks. They are the generalists, the survivors who can pivot when the world changes. We leave the neighbors behind, the gentle giants stripping trees and the heavy-jawed cousins chewing roots, and follow the Habilis as they trudge through the heat. They are walking into a future where being a specialist is a liability, and being a clever tool-using generalist is the ultimate winning strategy. The truce holds for today. The Boisei watches them go, his massive jaws still working, unaware that he is chewing on the end of his own era, while the small, scurrying figures disappearing into the grass are carrying the dawn of a new one. The air grows still, heavy with the scent of ozone and dust, as the great wheel of time turns slowly, favoring the adaptable over the strong. The Stone Circle Mystery. As the violet bruise of twilight deepens into the ink of true night, the temperature in the Rift Valley plummets. The heat that radiated from the earth all day evaporates into the thin, high atmosphere, leaving behind a chill that bites at the skin. Our band of Homo Habilis, weary from the day's scavenging and the constant, low-level adrenaline of avoiding the Dinotherium and the leopards, seeks a different kind of refuge. They are not heading for the trees tonight. The trees are safe from lions, yes, but they are exposed to the wind, and the leopards can climb. Instead, they are moving toward a specific location on the landscape, a place that marks a profound psychological shift in the story of our species. We follow them to a low rise near the edge of the ancient saline lake at Olduvai, a spot known to history as the DK site. Here, the ground is littered with basalt stones, heavy volcanic rocks that have been carried here from miles away. But look closely at how they are arranged. The shaper drops a heavy stone with a dull thud. It joins a ring of others, forming a rough, imperfect circle about 12 feet in diameter. To an untrained eye, it might look like a random scatter of geology. But to the eye looking for pattern, for intent, it is unmistakably artificial. This is the Stone Circle, a structure that has puzzled and fascinated archaeologists since Mary Leakey first brushed away the red dust from these rocks in the early 1960s. We watch as the group works. They are not building a house in the modern sense. There are no walls of brick, no roof of thatch. They are building a boundary. They pile thorny acacia branches into the gaps between the stones, creating a prickly, waist-high barrier. It is a windbreak, a hide, a primitive fortress against the creeping terrors of the dark. This act of piling stone upon stone to create a designated space is revolutionary. It is the birth of architecture. Before this, home was wherever you stopped walking. A nest in a tree was a temporary bed, abandoned the next morning. But this circle? This is a home base. It implies a return. It implies that they went out into the world, gathered food and stone, and brought it back to a central point. This concept, the home base hypothesis proposed by Glyn Isaac, suggests that Homo habilis was practicing central place foraging, a behavior that is distinctly human. They are dividing the world into here, safe, social, shared, and there, dangerous, wild, resource-rich. Inside the circle, the air is still. The wind that whistles across the savanna, carrying the scent of hyenas and the chill of the highlands, is deflected by the wall of brush and stone. The group huddles in the center, a tangle of limbs and soft fur. The climber settles down, her back against a large basalt block that retains the warmth of the sun. It acts as a radiator, a piece of passive solar technology that we still use in eco-architecture today. The psychological comfort of this barrier cannot be overstated. Even if a leopard could easily leap over it, the wall defines a space of belonging. It says, "This is ours." However, we must pause for a moment of scholarly honesty. The shadows of history are never clear, and the debate over this stone circle is fierce. Many modern taphonomists, scientists who study how organisms decay and fossilize, argue that the circle might not be a hut at all. They suggest it could be the radial root cast of a massive long-gone tree, where stones naturally settled as the roots rotted away. Others argue it is merely a hydraulic accumulation, a quirk of water flow. It is a debate between the romantic view of early humans as builders and the skeptical view of nature as the trickster. But tonight, in our story, we give the handyman the benefit of the doubt. The placement of the stones feels too deliberate, the manuports too heavy to be accidental. We see the shaper adjusting a branch, weaving it tighter into the thorns. This is not the work of a root, it is the work of a mind seeking order in chaos. The sensory environment inside the circle is intimate. The smell of crushed sage and dust mixes with the warm, musk scent of the group. There is the sound of chewing. Someone has brought back a tuber, and they are sharing it. This sharing is critical. In the open, eating is a frantic race against thieves. Inside the circle, there is time. Time to look at each other, time to bond. This safe space allows for the development of more complex social interactions. If you aren't constantly scanning the horizon for death, you can look at your mate's face. You can play with your child. The stone circle acts as a crucible for culture, a container where the fragile fluids of human connection can simmer and thicken. As the moon rises, casting long, skeletal shadows from the acacia branches, the group settles into sleep. But one set of eyes remains open. A sentinel. They take turns, perhaps not through a formal roster, but through an instinctual understanding that someone must always be watching. The sentinel sits near the gap in the circle, the doorway, listening to the night. The sounds are terrifyingly close. The whoop of a spotted hyena echoes off the canyon walls, a sound that is both a laugh and a scream. These predators are bone crushers, capable of snapping a habilis femur like a dry twig. But the sentinel does not panic. The wall offers a psychological shield. The hyena sniffs at the thorns, smelling the prey inside, but the barrier is confusing, prickly, and unnatural. It moves on, seeking easier game. The existence of this structure also hints at a change in how they raise their young. Human infants are born helpless, secondary altricials, requiring years of care. You cannot carry a helpless baby while scavenging for marrow and running from lions effectively. The home base offers a solution. The grandmother hypothesis. Chat. Perhaps the older females, those past reproductive age, stayed behind in the safety of the circle to watch the young while the strongest adults went out to hunt and gather. This division of labor would be a massive evolutionary advantage, allowing the population to grow faster than their ape cousins. The stone circle is not just a pile of rocks, it is a nursery, a school, and a retirement home all in one. The wind picks up, rattling the dry leaves in the windbreak. It is a lonely sound, emphasizing the vastness of the prehistoric landscape surrounding this tiny island of humanity. Millions of square miles of darkness, and here, in a 12-foot circle, a flicker of consciousness is keeping the night at bay. The shaper shifts in his sleep, his hand resting on a hammerstone. Even in dreams, the tool is never far. The connection between the hand, the stone, and the mind is complete. They have modified the world to fit them, rather than just modifying themselves to fit the world. As we pull back, rising into the cold air above the gorge, the stone circle looks like a small, dark eye staring up at the stars. It is a humble beginning. It is not the pyramids of Giza, nor the skyscrapers of New York, but it is the grandfather of them all. It is the first time we said, "I will build a place and I will be safe here." The concept of home, that emotional anchor that we all seek, was born here, in the dust and thorns of Olduvai, under the watchful gaze of the Southern Cross. The handyman has become the architect, and the foundation of human civilization has been laid, rock by heavy rock. The child of Olduvai. The great wheel of time turns, grinding mountains into dust and pressing forests into coal, yet the wind over the Rift Valley sings the exact same note it did 2 million years ago. We let the image of the stone circle dissolve, the thorny branches turning to gray ash, the breathing bodies of the Homo Habilis fading into the geological strata. The camera of our mind does not move in space, only in time. We are still at Olduvai Gorge, but the lush wetlands have vanished, replaced by a stark, magnificent scar in the earth, a canyon of layered sediment that reads like the pages of a history book left open in the sun. It is November 4th, 1960. The air is thick with the heat of the modern era, and the silence is broken not by the roar of a dinotherium, but by the rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape of a dental pick against ancient clay. We are looking at the Leakey family, Louis, Mary, and their son, Jonathan. They are the detectives of deep time, a family dynasty searching for the identity of the ghost we have been watching. For decades, Louis has argued that the toolmaker, the true ancestor of man, was waiting to be found here. He has staked his reputation on it, battling the skepticism of a scientific community that looked to Asia or Europe for human origins. The focus narrows to Jonathan Leakey, then just a young man, wandering a site known as FLK North. It is a nondescript slope of loose scree and thorns. He looks down. There, eroding out of the hillside, is a glint of white that does not belong to a goat or a gazelle. It is a jawbone. Not the massive heavy-jawed mandible of the Nutcracker man, Paranthropus boisei, that his parents had famously discovered just a year prior, but something else, something smaller, something more delicate. He calls out. The moment is electric, a charge that leaps across the gorge. When Louis and Mary arrive, they fall to their knees in the dust, not in prayer, but in scrutiny. As they brush away the matrix of millions of years, they reveal not just a jaw, but fragments of a skull, the parietal bones that form the roof of the brain case, and, miraculously, a scattering of hand bones. This fossil, catalogued as OH7, is the child of Olduvai. It belongs to a male, roughly 12 or 13 years old, who died nearly 1.75 million years ago. But to the Leakeys, he is the Holy Grail. For a year, they had been wrestling with an uncomfortable puzzle. They had found stone tools, the Oldowan choppers, but the only hominin they had found near them was the small-brained, massive-jawed Zinjanthropus boisei. It was like finding a heavy-duty tractor in the garage of a race car driver. The tools didn't fit the owner. Zinj looked like a vegetarian specialist, not a clever toolmaker. But now, holding the gracile jaw of OH7, Louis sees the answer. This is the toolmaker. This is the ancestor. The teeth are smaller, more human-like. The brain, while not huge, is significantly larger than Zinji's relative to body size. However, the discovery of OH7 triggers one of the most polite yet vicious brawls in the history of science. It forces a complete rewriting of the rules of our genus. Up until this moment, the cerebral Rubicon, the line in the sand that separated animal from human, was set at a brain capacity of 700 to 750 cubic centimeters, a standard established by the great anatomist Sir Arthur Keith. If your brain was smaller than that, you were an ape. If larger, you were a man. The child of Olduvai crashes right into this wall. His brain is estimated at roughly 640 to 675 cubic centimeters. He is too smart to be an Australopithecine, but technically too dumb to be a Homo according to the old rules. The Leakeys, along with paleoanthropologist Philip Tobias and anatomist John Napier, make a bold, almost rebellious decision. They don't change the fossil to fit the definition, they change the definition to fit the fossil. In a landmark 1964 paper, they propose a new species, Homo Habilis. They lower the cerebral Rubicon to 600 cubic centimeters, effectively opening the VIP club of humanity to this smaller, scrappier ancestor. The name itself, Homo Habilis, is suggested by Raymond Dart, the discoverer of the Taung child, who loves a good Latin pun. It means handy, able, mentally skillful, or vigorous. It is a direct nod to the hand bones found with OH7. Let us look at that hand again through the lens of 1960s science. The finger bones are broad at the tips, capable of supporting fleshy pads, the kind you need for fine tactile work. The thumb is stout and opposable. It is a hand built for the precision grip, the ability to hold a small object between the thumb and forefinger with control. It is the hand of a watchmaker, a surgeon, a knapper of flint. Yet, the fingers are still curved. The past is refusing to let go. This curvature confirms what we saw in the trees. The handyman was still a climber. The scientific community explodes. Critics call it an invalid taxon, dismissing habilis as just a large australopith or a small erectus. It is the middle child of evolution, overlooked, misunderstood, and struggling for identity. But there is a poignant emotional resonance to this moment. Imagine holding the fossilized finger of a 12-year-old boy who lived almost 2 million years ago. That bone once gripped a mother's fur, threw a rock at a jackal, perhaps traced a line in the dust. The child of Olduvai is not just a specimen, he is a biography cut short. The Leakeys are not just scientists, they are the custodians of his memory. They see in him the bridge. He is the transitional form that Darwin predicted must exist, the link that connects the ape-like past to the human future. He is the pre-Zinj, the one who was there before, or perhaps alongside, the heavy-chewing cousins. As the sun beats down on the excavation site, we see the meticulous nature of the work. Every grain of sand is sifted, every fragment is mapped. It is a slow, meditative process, a sharp contrast to the frantic survival of the creature they are digging up. The Leakeys work with toothbrushes and dental picks, tools of modern hygiene repurposed for ancient resurrection. They find other fragments too. OH8, the foot we discussed, which shows the arch of a walker but the bite of a crocodile. The story of the prehistoric hell is written directly on the bones they uncover. It validates the narrative of struggle. This child did not die in a bed. He died in a world that wanted to eat him. The discovery also shifts the geographical center of gravity for human origins. For a long time, Asia was the favored spot, thanks to Peking man and Java man. But Olduvai Gorge pulls the map back to Africa. It asserts that the African savanna is the womb of humanity. It is here, in the shadow of the rift volcanoes, that the experiment of being human truly began. The Leakeys' stubborn belief in Olduvai pays off. They have found the handyman, the creator of the tools that litter the gorge floor. It is a vindication of the idea that technology, the tool, is the defining trait of our genus. We watch Mary Leakey lighting a cigar, her face weathered by the same sun that darkened the skin of the habilis. She traces the curve of the parietal bone. She knows that this skull once housed a mind that was just waking up, a mind that could plan, that could fear, that could teach. The child of Olduvai may have died young, but in his discovery, he achieved a kind of immortality. He became the face of the first human. The debate over his classification will rage for decades. Some still argue he should be Australopithecus habilis, but the name has stuck. He is the handyman. He is the one who picked up the rock. The wind picks up again, swirling dust around the excavation pit. It covers the tracks of the Land Rover, just as it covered the tracks of the hominins. The continuity is striking. We are the same species as the Leakeys, looking back at the species that started it all. It is a family reunion across an abyss of time. The child of Olduvai sleeps in a box in a museum now, but in our story, he is still out there on the ledge, watching the stars, unaware that 2 million years later, his distant kin would come looking for him, armed with brushes and questions, desperate to know his name. The sun sets on 1960, but the light of discovery burns on, illuminating the path back to the beginning. The changing climate. The wind that sweeps across the Rift Valley is no longer just a breeze. It is an eraser. We have watched the handyman survive the predators, the competition with Boazé, and the daily struggle for calories. But now, the stage itself is beginning to shift under their feet. The lush, mosaic landscape of woodlands and wetlands that cradled Homo habilis for 500,000 years is drying up. The great geological clock of the Pleistocene is ticking toward a new era, driven by the rhythmic wobbles of the Earth's orbit, the Milankovitch cycles. These subtle shifts in the planet's tilt and path around the sun are cooling the oceans and locking up moisture in polar ice caps thousands of miles away. The effect in East Africa is profound. The rains are failing. We stand on a ridge overlooking the Olduvai Basin, but the view has changed. The dense stands of fig trees and palms where the climber once found safety are retreating, shrinking into isolated pockets of green along the vanishing riverbeds. In their place, the golden savanna is expanding, a relentless tide of grass that stretches to the horizon. This is the aridification pulse. It is a slow-motion catastrophe for a creature adapted to the edge of the forest. The food sources that Homo habilis relied on, the soft fruits, the shade-loving plants, the easy access to tree cover, are disappearing. The world is becoming harder, brighter, and more open. Watch our band now. They are leaner. The easy calories of the wetland are gone. They must travel farther each day to find water and food. The handyman is being forced to become the walker. Their bodies, those beautiful mosaics of climber and biped, are being tested to the breaking point. The long arms that were so useful in the trees are becoming a burden on the open plains, dead weight that costs energy to carry. The curved fingers are less necessary when the nearest tree is a mile away. Evolution is a ruthless editor, and it is beginning to redline the traits that no longer serve. This climatic pressure cooker is the engine of turnover pulse hypothesis, a theory proposed by paleontologist Elizabeth Verba. It suggests that major evolutionary leaps happen during these periods of rapid climate change. Species that cannot adapt go extinct, those that can evolve. Homo habilis is caught in the crosshairs. They are generalists, yes, but are they general enough? We see signs of stress in the fossil record. The enamel on their teeth shows hypoplasia, lines that indicate periods of malnutrition during childhood. They are surviving, but they are not thriving. The social dynamic of the group is also fraying. The home base strategy, the stone circle we saw earlier, becomes harder to maintain when you have to move camp every 2 days to follow the migrating herds. The intimacy of the fireside is replaced by the exhaustion of the march. We see a mother carrying her child, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The heat is relentless, the shade is gone. They need to cool down. This is where another subtle physiological change might be taking place. The loss of body hair. To hunt or scavenge effectively in the midday sun without overheating, you need to sweat. And to sweat efficiently, you need naked skin. We cannot know for sure when this happened, as fur does not fossilize, but the drying of Africa is the most likely culprit. Imagine the handyman slowly losing their fur, becoming the naked ape, their skin darkening to protect against the UV radiation. In this harsh new world, the competition with Paranthropus boisei intensifies. The nutcracker man is actually doing well in the short term. His massive jaws are perfect for the tough dry tubers and roots that are now abundant. He is a specialist in hard times food. We see a boisei digging for a massive root, chewing through it with the ease of a machine. He looks at the Habilis group, struggling to find softer fare with what might be interpreted as indifference. But specialization is a trap. If the climate swings back, or if the specific plants he eats disappear, he is doomed. The Habilis, with their tools and their omnivorous diet, have an escape hatch. They can switch to meat, they can smash bones, they can think their way out of hunger. But the most significant change is happening in the brain. The stress of this environment, the need to remember where the waterholes are across vast distances, the need to coordinate complex group movements, the need to predict the behavior of animals they are now forced to hunt more actively, is pushing their cognitive hardware to its limit. The brain of Homo habilis is growing, but it is reaching a ceiling. To support a bigger brain, you need a better body, a bigger engine to power the computer. And habilis is simply too small. They are running a Ferrari engine in a go-kart. We witness a moment of poignant transition. An elderly female, one of the last who remembers the old wet world, collapses. She cannot keep up. The group stops. They do not have the luxury of carrying her. They linger for a moment, touching her, making soft sounds of distress. This is the grief of the hominin. We see it in chimps, we see it in elephants, and we see it here. But the sun is dropping, and the hyenas are gathering. They must move on. They leave her there, a sacrifice to the changing world. It is a brutal reminder that evolution does not care about the individual. It cares only about the lineage. As they walk away, the dust swirling around their feet, we notice something else. In the distance, silhouetted against the setting sun, is a figure. It is taller. Much taller. It walks with a stride that eats up the miles, a smooth, efficient gait that looks startlingly modern. It is not Homo habilis. It is something new, something that the drying world has forged from the raw material of the genus Homo. The handyman is looking at his own replacement. The era of the small, scrambling scavenger is ending. The era of the traveler, the runner, the conqueror of the plains is about to begin. The climate has done its work. It has dried the earth to prepare the ground for the next seed. The rise of the walker. The sun hangs low over the shimmering heat of the Turkana Basin, casting long, skeletal shadows across a landscape that has grown harder, drier, and more unforgiving. Our band of Homo habilis is tired. We can see it in their gait, the shuffling, rolling walk of a creature built for compromise. They are thirsty, their small bodies working overtime to dissipate the heat of the open savanna. But as they crest a low ridge, looking for the telltale green of a distant watering hole, they stop. Standing near the water's edge is a figure that stops our breath. It is not a predator. It is not a boisei chewing roots. It is a vision of the future. This new being stands nearly 6 feet tall. Its legs are long and powerful, designed for a stride that eats up the miles with effortless efficiency. Its arms are shorter, no longer dragging near the knees, signaling a final farewell to the trees. The rib cage is barrel-shaped, not cone-shaped like an ape's, allowing for massive lungs to fuel endurance running. This is Homo ergaster, or early African Homo erectus, the workman, the walker, the traveler. To the habilis watching from the ridge, this creature must look like a god or a monster. It is sleek, hairless, and dark-skinned, sweating freely to cool a brain that has surged past the 800 cubic centimeters mark and is racing toward 1,000 cubic centimeters. The interaction between these two species, the fading ancestor and the rising descendant, is one of the most poignant moments in the fossil record. For a long time, the single-species hypothesis, suggested that evolution was a linear ladder. Habilis became erectus, who became sapiens, one rung at a time. But discoveries at Cubifora and Ulleret have shattered this simple narrative. We now know that Homo habilis and Homo erectus coexisted in the same lake basin for nearly 500,000 years. They were contemporaries. They were neighbors. Imagine the scene. The small, scurrying habilis still retreating to the trees at night, watching the tall, confident erectus stride out into the open plains, armed with fire and hand axes. It is a meeting of the old world and the new. The erectus figure bends down to drink. His movements are fluid. He does not scramble. He hinges at the hips. When he stands up, he scans the horizon with eyes that see further, literally and metaphorically. He is carrying a tool, but it is not the simple Oldowan flake of the habilis. It is a teardrop-shaped masterpiece of stone, the Apuleian hand axe. This tool is symmetrical, bifacial, and aesthetically pleasing. It requires a level of cognitive planning and manual dexterity that the habilis shaper, for all his skill, never achieved. It is the Swiss Army knife of the Pleistocene, a tool that says, "I know what I am doing." Our Habilis group watches with a mix of fear and curiosity. They do not approach. The sheer size difference is intimidating. A male erectus could weigh nearly double what a male Habilis does. They are competing for the same resources, meat, marrow, and territory. But the erectus has a devastating advantage. They can hunt in the heat of the day. Their modern body proportions and sweating ability allow them to run prey to exhaustion, a technique known as persistence hunting. While the habilis is panting in the shade, the erectus is jogging a kudu to death. It is an evolutionary changing of the guard. The handyman was the scrappy startup. The walker is the corporate takeover. There is a scholarly debate here about the nature of their relationship. Did they ignore each other? Did they fight? Did they interbreed? The genetic distance might have been too great for the latter, but the competition was real. The niche partitioning that allowed Habilis to live alongside Boisset fails here. Erectus wants the same high-quality food, but they are better at getting it. They are the guild of the carnivores now, and Habilis is being pushed to the margins. We see the Habilis group turn away, retreating back toward the safety of the rocky outcrops. They are becoming the ghost lineage, the ones who stayed behind while the others moved on. As the sun sets, we witness another revolutionary difference. The erectus group does not just huddle for warmth. They gather around a flicker of orange light, fire. The evidence for controlled fire by Homo erectus is debated, with sites like Wonderwork Cave pushing dates back to 1 million years and potential evidence at Cubifora even earlier. If erectus had fire, they had the ultimate weapon. Fire cooks food, releasing more calories for the brain. Fire scares away lions, allowing for deep REM sleep on the ground. Fire is the hearth, the center of storytelling. The habilis, watching from the dark, cold ridge, sees this glowing miracle and cannot comprehend it. They are the Promethean observers, witnessing the theft of fire, but unable to hold the torch themselves. The decline of Homo habilis was not a singular dramatic event. It was a slow fade. As the climate continued to dry, the pockets of woodland they relied on shrank further. The erectus populations expanded, their long legs carrying them out of Africa and into Asia and Europe, the first globalization. The habilis remained tethered to the shrinking rift. They were the bridge, and bridges are meant to be crossed, not lived on. In the twilight, a young habilis watches the erectus encampment. He holds a simple chopper in his hand. He drops it. It clatters against the stone. The sound is small compared to the crackling of the fire below. It is a moment of profound melancholy. The species that taught the world to use tools, that sparked the first glimmers of humanity, is now the primitive relative. They are the hobbits of the real world, fading into the mists of legend. The walker does not look up. He is staring into the flames, dreaming of worlds he will conquer. The handyman turns back to the dark, his shift over. The baton has been passed. The race continues. The eternal handprint. The silence that follows the departure of a species is not an empty silence. It is a heavy, pregnant pause in the symphony of life, a breath held before the next movement begins. We stand once more on the edge of the Olduvai Gorge, but the calendar of deep time has turned its pages forward past the 1.6 million year mark. The landscape is unrecognizable from the lush mosaic world where we first met our handyman. The forests have retreated into memory, leaving behind a stark, open savanna dominated by the relentless sun and the whistling wind. The Homo Habilis, the small, scrappy pioneer who first dared to shape the world with stone, has vanished from the fossil record. There is no single last stand, no dramatic battle where the final handyman fell, defending his circle of thorns. Extinction is rarely a bang. It is a whisper. It is a slow fade, a gradual disappearance as birth rates drop below death rates, as the climate dries just a little too much, as the taller, faster Homo erectus outcompetes them for the best territory. The ghost lineage we spoke of has finally given up the ghost. But did they truly die? This is the most profound question we can ask as we close this chapter. In the strict biological sense, yes, the species Homo habilis ceased to exist. Their unique combination of long, climbing arms and small, clever brains was no longer the winning ticket in the lottery of evolution. The nutcracker man, Paranthropus boisei, would linger for another million years, a specialist in a changing world, before he too would succumb to the drying earth, leaving no descendants. But Habilis did not hit a dead end. They are a bridge, remember? A bridge does not disappear when you cross it. It becomes the path behind you. Most anthropologists agree that Homo habilis, or a very close relative, was the direct ancestor of Homo erectus, and therefore, the direct ancestor of Homo sapiens. They did not go extinct in the way the dodo did. They evolved. They poured their genes, their traits, their hard-won adaptations into the vessel of the future. The handyman didn't die. He just grew up. He became the walker, who became the thinker, who became you. Look at your hand right now. Open it. Flex the fingers. That opposition of the thumb, that precision grip that allows you to hold a pen, a steering wheel, or a smartphone. That is the inheritance of OH7. It is a biological heirloom passed down through 2 million years of struggle. Every time you type a message, every time you chop a vegetable, every time you button a shirt, you are reenacting the revolution that began in the dust of Olduvai. The ghost of the shaper is in your muscles. The ghost of the climber is in your grip. We are not separate from them. We are the latest iteration of their design. The Oldowan tools they created, those simple sharp flakes, are not just rocks. They are the first permanent thoughts. Before Habilis, the mind of an animal died with it. But when the handyman struck a rock and left it on the ground, he left a piece of his mind outside his body. He created an external memory. This is how you cut. This is how you survive. Those stones, millions of them scattered across Africa, are the first library. They are the enduring testament to a creature that refused to accept the world as it was and decided to change it. The stone circle may have been reclaimed by the earth, the thorns rotted to dust, but the idea of home, of a safe place to share food and affection, is the foundation of every city and every household on earth today. The gossip circle has become the internet. The scavenging has become the global economy. The shared care of the grandmother hypothesis is the bedrock of our society. We are living in the world they dreamt of. As the sun sets over the gorge for the last time in our journey, the shadows stretch out, long and purple, covering the layers of sediment that hold the bones of the child of Olduvai. The wind whispers through the dry grass, a sound that has not changed since the Pleistocene. It carries the dust of the ancestors, the microscopic particles of calcium and phosphate that once formed the bodies of the first humans. We float up, higher and higher, leaving the Rift Valley behind. It looks small now, a scar on the face of the planet, but it is the navel of the world. It is where we were born. The handyman sleeps in the stone, but he wakes in us. He is the curiosity that drove us to explore. He is the hunger that drove us to innovate. He is the fear that taught us to cooperate. We are the handyman writ large, still trying to shape the world, still huddling together against the dark, still looking for the next sharp stone that will solve our problems. The story of Homo Habilis is not a tragedy of extinction. It is the prologue of our triumph. It is the story of how a small, vulnerable ape decided that it would not be eaten, that it would not be cold, and that it would not be alone. And in that decision, made with a rock in one hand and a friend in the other, humanity was born. The handprint is eternal. It is pressed into the clay of history, and it fits your hand perfectly. The fire has burned down to embers, casting a soft, warm glow that barely touches the edges of the room. The journey is done. We have walked 2 million years in the footsteps of giants who were small, and we have found our way back to the safety of the present. Let the image of the Rift Valley fade now, replaced by the comfort of your own space, the familiar weight of your blankets, the steady rhythm of your own breathing. You are safe. The predators of the past are just shadows in a story. The struggle of the handyman is a memory etched in bone, a battle already won for you. Feel the tension leaving your shoulders, unspooling like a knot loosening in water. You are the descendant of survivors, the result of an unbroken chain of life that stretches back to the dawn of time. You carry their strength in your DNA, their ingenuity in your mind, and their endurance in your heart. Sleep now, knowing that the hard work was done long ago. The tools are down, the circle is closed, the night is yours to rest in. Sweet dreams.